A boot kicked the garage door open and cold air rushed in. A woman flinched against the concrete wall, both arms wrapped around her swollen belly. A dog pressed close to her side, growling low. A hand yanked a thin blanket off her shoulders and threw it in the dirt. "You sleep out here now," a voice hissed. The woman said nothing. She just held her stomach tighter and stared at the floor. This was Marisol Kowalski, 7 months pregnant, married to a man 3 states away who thought his mother was taking care of her. Instead, she was rationed to 1 meal a day and locked out of her own kitchen. Nobody knew. Nobody was coming. And when her husband rolled his Harley up that driveway after 8 months, what he uncovered would tear this family apart. What did Dutch Kowalski do next? Stay with me on this one. The Harley came off the highway a little after noon and slowed on the gravel road that ran out past the almond groves. Dutch Kowalski had been in the saddle since before sunrise. 3 states, 8 months, 100 security runs for the Iron Saints, and every mile of it he'd been thinking about the same thing. Getting home, seeing her face, putting his hand flat on her belly and feeling the kid kick back at him. He'd worn the tread thin on that thought. It was the thing that got him through the long, empty stretches of Nevada at 3 in the morning, the thing he chewed on when the club business got ugly and he wondered why he still did any of it. He did it for her, for them, for the little life that was coming. He was a big man, military big back before the club. Thick through the neck and shoulders, a gray-flecked beard, hands like bricks. Men crossed the street when Dutch walked toward them, but there was a softness in him that only 3 people had ever seen, and one of them was carrying his child. His father had seen it. His brother had seen it once. And Marisol saw it every day, which was the whole reason he'd married her. He killed the engine in the driveway and just sat there a second, listening to the tick of the cooling pipes. The house looked the same. Single-story, faded blue, the porch his father built before the cancer took him. Same as always, but something was off. He couldn't name it yet. It was too quiet. No music from the kitchen radio. No wind chimes she'd hung on the eaves. Just quiet, the kind that has weight to it. Marisol should have been on that porch. 8 months of letters and phone calls, and every single one ended the same way: "I'll be waiting on the porch when you get home." She wasn't there. He swung his leg over and walked up. The screen door was latched. He knocked and he heard something inside. Footsteps fast and light, then a whisper he couldn't make out. Then nothing. "Mari," he called. "It's me, baby, I'm home." The door opened, but it wasn't Marisol. It was his mother. Lorraine Kowalski was 61, thin as fence wire, with a helmet of gray curls and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She had a dish towel over one shoulder and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Well," she said, "look what the road dragged back. You could have called ahead. I'd have made something." "Where's Marisol?" "Resting." "She's been tired. The baby takes a lot out of a girl." Lorraine stepped back to let him in. "Come on then, don't let the flies in." Dutch stepped inside and the wrongness got louder. The house was too clean, not lived in clean, museum clean, every surface bare and wiped and cold. He set his helmet on the entry table and his eyes went down the hall, and that's when he noticed the guest room door was open. He and Marisol had turned that room into a nursery before he left. They'd painted it pale green together, one Saturday, laughing, getting more paint on each other than the walls. There'd been a crib. A rocking chair his father had refinished. A little shelf of stuffed animals Marisol couldn't stop buying. The room was empty, stripped to the studs near enough. Bare mattress leaning against the wall. No crib, no rocker. No shelf, just boxes stacked in the corner and the smell of fresh bleach. "Ma," Dutch said slowly, "where's the nursery?" "Oh, that." Lorraine waved the dish towel. "We had a leak in the roof, sweetheart, water damage. I had to move everything to storage before it ruined. You'll thank me. That crib is worth good money." He walked into the kitchen, and that's where the story started telling itself, whether his mother wanted it told or not. There was a padlock on the pantry, an actual padlock, brass and new, through a hasp somebody had screwed into the door his father had hung 40 years ago. And taped to the refrigerator at eye level was a piece of paper, handwriting he recognized. His mother's tight, slanting cursive. He read it. It was a schedule, not a to-do list. A schedule. Broken down by the hour. 5:30 a.m. up, no exceptions. 6:00 scrub kitchen floor, hands and knees. 7:00 laundry, hang outside only, dryer costs money. Down the whole page it went. Windows, bathrooms, weeding, sweep the garage, bandits' yard. And at the bottom, underlined twice, meals are earned. Complaints are not tolerated. This is not your house. Dutch read it 3 times. His jaw worked. He didn't say anything, because a cold thing had started moving in his chest, and he'd learned a long time ago that when that cold thing moved, he needed to be very, very careful with his words. He'd hurt people when that cold thing moved. He'd promised Marisol he never would again. "What is this?" he said. "Structure," Lorraine said. "That girl had no idea how to keep a home. I was doing you a favor." "Somebody has to teach her." "Where is she?" "I told you, resting." Dutch turned and walked out the back. His boots hit the concrete of the patio, and the old shepherd came around the corner of the garage, Bandit, gray-muzzled now, the dog he'd had since before Marisol. Bandit didn't run to him. The dog looked back over his shoulder at the garage, then at Dutch, then back at the garage like he was trying to tell him something. Then he trotted a few steps toward the side door and stopped and looked back again, waiting. Dutch followed the dog. The side door of the garage was shut. He pulled it open and the smell hit him first. Motor oil and cold and something else, a sleeping smell, a lived-in smell that had no business being in a garage. And there she was. Marisol was sitting on an old camping cot in the corner between the workbench and the water heater. She had a blanket around her shoulders, the thin one, and she was wearing 2 sweaters. Her belly stretched the fabric tight. Her feet were swollen. There was a bottle of water on the floor and a plastic plate, empty, scraped clean. And when she looked up and saw him standing in the doorway, her face did something he would never in his life forget. It lit up with pure joy for half a second, and then it collapsed into terror. Not of him. For him. She looked at him like his being there was the most dangerous thing that could possibly happen. "Dutch," she whispered, "you're home." She wouldn't meet his eyes. He crossed the garage in 3 steps and went down on his knees in front of the cot so his eyes were below hers, so she wouldn't have to look up at all that size and threat. He took her cold hands in his. They were like ice. 7 months along, and her hands were cold as the concrete she'd been living on. "Baby," he said, and his voice cracked in half. "What is this? Why are you out here?" She started shaking her head before he even finished. "It's fine. It's fine. It's not. Please don't make it into something. Please. You just got home. You're home now. That's all that matters." "Mari," he held her hands tighter, "look at me." She looked at him. Her eyes were red-rimmed and hollow, and she had lost weight everywhere except the belly, and there were shadows under her cheekbones that hadn't been there when he'd left. And whatever was in his face, the calm, the patience, the safety he was trying so hard to hold together, it finally broke her open. "I've been sleeping out here," she said. The words came out fast like water through a crack in a dam. "Since the 2nd week. She said the guest room was hers now. She said pregnant women carry heat and it runs up the power bill. She took the crib and sold it. She sold the rocking chair, Dutch. Your dad's chair. I begged her not to. I told her you'd want it for the baby and she said it was clutter." He didn't move. He kept his hands soft around hers. "Keep going," he said quietly. "Meal a day. Whatever I finish the chores, I got a plate. If the china had a water spot, no plate. She counts the china, Dutch. There's a scratch on a gravy boat from before I even lived here, and she's still. Marisol pressed the back of her hand to her mouth. Some days I got nothing at all. She'd find one thing wrong at 8 at night, and that was it, no dinner, and I'd lie out here with my stomach eating itself, and I'd talk to the baby so it wouldn't feel so alone. Bandit sleeps out here with me. He keeps me warm. He's the only reason She stopped. She couldn't finish it. Dutch closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were dry, and that was worse than tears, and Marisol knew it. "Please don't hurt her," she said suddenly, grabbing his wrist. "Dutch, look at me. Promise me you won't do anything. You have to promise me. There's things you don't know. If you touch her, if you even yell, it's going to be so much worse. Not for me, for you, please." That last part he set aside. He didn't understand it yet, but he heard it, and he filed it away, because Dutch Kowalski had survived 20 years in a world where the thing somebody wasn't saying was always more important than the thing they were. "Okay," he said. He kissed her knuckles. "Okay, baby, I hear you. I'm not going to touch her. I'm not going to yell." He stood up slow and pulled the blanket up around her shoulders and tucked it, gentle, the way you'd tuck a child. "You stay right here. Keep Bandit with you. I'm just going to go talk to my mother." "Dutch." "Just talk," he said. "I promise." He walked back into the house. He walked into the kitchen where Lorraine was drying a plate that was already dry. He pulled his keys out of his pocket and set them on the counter, soft, no clatter, and he pulled out a chair. "Sit down, Ma," he said. "You and me are going to have a talk." Lorraine set the plate in the rack. She didn't sit. She folded the dish towel into a neat square and laid it on the counter, and when she turned around, her face had rearranged itself into something wounded and righteous all at once. "So she got to you," Lorraine said. "First hour home, I knew she would. That girl's been waiting 8 months to poison you against your own mother." "Sit down." "I gave up my life for you too." Lorraine's voice climbed. "I moved in here to help. Do you know what it's like at my age, cooking and cleaning and looking after a grown woman who does nothing but lie around feeling sorry for herself? She doesn't lift a finger unless I make her. She'd have this house looking like a barn. I was helping her, Dutch. One day she'll thank me." "There's a padlock," Dutch said, "on Dad's pantry. Food costs money. She'd eat us out of house and home." "You sold the crib." "Storage, it's in storage." "You just told me it was in storage from a roof leak," Dutch said. "Now it's storage from the power bill. 2 minutes ago it was water damage." He said it flat, no heat, just laying the pieces on the table. "Which one is it, Ma?" And for just a second, Lorraine's face flickered. The story didn't hold, and she knew he'd seen it not hold, and something behind her eyes went hard and calculating in a way that would have frightened a lesser man. Dutch pulled the chair out a little further. "Sit down," he said a third time, "please." And this time she sat. She smoothed her skirt over her knees and folded her hands and looked at him with the patient, put-upon expression of a woman certain she would win. Because Lorraine Kowalski had a card she hadn't played yet, and she was so sure of that card that she'd stopped being afraid of anything at all. Dutch sat down across from her. He rubbed his face with both hands, and when he lowered them he looked, for a moment, unbearably tired. Just a man who'd ridden a long way to come home to a house that had become a cage. "I'm going to ask you a straight question," he said. "And I want a straight answer because I already know most of it. Why? Why would you do this to a pregnant woman, to my wife, to the mother of your grandchild?" Lorraine was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, small and cold. "Because," she said, "you don't get to have a family, not after what you did to mine." And there it was, the card. The thing under the whole thing, The thing Marisol had been begging him not to trip over. Dutch went still. "What I did." "Your brother," Lorraine said. "My Wyatt. 2 years dead, and you ride around on that motorcycle like nothing happened, like you didn't put him in the ground." The kitchen went dead quiet. Somewhere out back, Bandit gave a single low bark and went silent. Now here's the thing you have to understand. 2 years before, Dutch's younger brother Wyatt had died on a 2-lane road at 1 in the morning, thrown from a bike doing 90 with a blood alcohol level 3 times the legal limit. And Lorraine had decided in the black pit of her grief that it was Dutch's fault. Dutch was the one who rode. Dutch was the one who'd brought Wyatt into that world. And she had spent 2 years telling anyone who'd listened that her oldest son had gotten her youngest killed. She'd said it at the funeral. She'd said it to the neighbors. She'd built her whole ruined life around it, brick by brick, until it was the only floor she had left to stand on. But that wasn't the card. The card was worse. "You want to know why that girl never called you?" Lorraine leaned in. "Why she took every bit of it and never said one word on those phone calls you two had? Because I told her the truth. I told her what I know about the night Wyatt died. And I told her that if she ever breathed a word of any of this to you, if you ever came home and made trouble, I would walk into the sheriff's station and I would tell them my son ran his brother off that road, that you were drunk, that you fought and you forced him off and you rode away and left him to die." She sat back serene. "I have a friend at the church who'll swear she saw the whole thing. 2 witnesses, Dutch, that's all it takes. You've got a record. You've got a club. Who do you think they'll believe? A grieving mother and a church-going woman, or a man in a leather cut with an assault charge from his 20s? Dutch didn't move, but the cold thing in his chest had gone all the way to ice. "That's why she slept in the garage and smiled through it," Lorraine said. "That poor, stupid girl. She was protecting you. She let me lock her out of her own kitchen because she believed me when I said I could send you to prison and take that baby the day it's born. So don't you dare sit at my table and act like the wronged man. You are alive and free because your wife ate 1 meal a day to keep you that way." And that was the moment the whole story turned inside out. This wasn't a cruel old woman and a chore list. This was blackmail. This was a threat of prison, of the law, of a grandchild taken. Marisol hadn't been suffering to survive. She'd been suffering to shield him. Every scraped plate, every night on that cot with the dog for warmth, she'd been paying his ransom. 8 months of it, alone, with nobody to tell and nowhere to run, and a baby getting bigger inside her every single day. If you're still with me and your chest is tight right now the way mine is telling this, take 1 second and hit that subscribe button. Because what Dutch does with the truth in the next few minutes is the reason I had to tell you this story. Now stay close. Dutch stood up from the table. Slowly, he walked to the window over the sink and put both hands on the edge of the counter and looked out at the garage where his wife was sitting on a cot. And Lorraine watched his back, waiting for the anger she'd braced for, the anger she could use. It didn't come. When he turned around, he wasn't shaking. His voice, when it came, was quiet and steady as a man reading off a grocery list. "You've been telling people I killed Wyatt for 2 years," he said. "And I let you. You want to know why I let you? Because I've spent 2 years believing you were half right, that if I'd tried a little harder to stop him, he'd be alive. I've carried that every single mile. You put a weight on me and I picked it up because you're my mother and you lost your boy, and I figured a son ought to carry what he can for a grieving mother." Lorraine's chin lifted. "You should carry it, it's yours." "No," Dutch said, "it isn't, and I can prove it. I just never wanted to. Because proving it means making you hear something I didn't think either of us could survive." He reached into his cut, into the inside pocket, and pulled out his phone. His hands were not quite as steady now. "I've had this for 2 years. I've never played it for anybody. Not the cops. Not the club. Not Marisol. I couldn't stand to hear his voice. Lorraine's face changed, just slightly. The serene certainty cracked at one corner. "The night he died," Dutch said, "Wyatt called me. 11:42 p.m. I was already home. I was already off the road. He was at the Blackfoot bar out on County Line and he was drunk and he wanted to ride to Vegas right then, that minute. And I told him no. I told him to leave the bike and I'd come get him. I begged him, Ma. I told him I'd drive an hour each way. I didn't care, just leave the keys with the bartender. And he laughed at me and hung up. And then a minute later he left me this." He set the phone on the table between them. His thumb hovered over the screen. Marisol had appeared in the doorway now, the blanket still around her shoulders, one hand on the frame, and she was shaking her head slowly, because she knew what this was going to cost him. "You don't have to," Marisol whispered. "I do," Dutch said. He looked at his mother. "You put my brother's death on me to control my wife. You made her sleep with the dog, so yeah, I do." He pressed play. And through the little speaker, tinny and slurred and full of bar noise, came a voice that had been in the ground for 2 years. Wyatt, laughing, music behind him. "Dutch, big brother, quit callin' me, man. I'm grown. You always gotta be the responsible one. Take my keys, don't take my keys." A wet laugh. "I took him back off the bar, bro. I got him. I'm riding. You can't stop me. You never could stop me. That's your whole problem. Don't call Ma. Do not call Ma. I love you, man. I'll see you in Vegas, or I won't." Laughter fading. "Or I won't." The voicemail ended. The kitchen was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Lorraine Kowalski sat perfectly still. And then, very slowly, her folded hands came apart and one of them rose to her mouth, and the color went out of her face like water out of a cracked glass. Because that was her boy. That was Wyatt, drunk, laughing, taking his own keys back off the bar, telling his brother he couldn't be stopped. There was no fight. There was no drunk Dutch running him off the road. There was no phantom witness from the church who could ever make that voice say anything else. There was just a young man who'd made his own terrible choice, and an older brother who tried to stop him and failed and then buried it so deep, he nearly let it bury him. "He called me," Dutch said softly. "Not the other way around. He took his own keys. I've had proof for 2 years that I didn't kill my brother, and I never listened to it because I loved him and I couldn't stand to hear him laugh. And you..." His voice finally moved, just an inch, a tremor under the calm. "You took my grief, Ma, the realest thing I ever felt, and you sharpened it into a knife and you held it to my wife's throat for 8 months." Lorraine made a sound. It wasn't a word. It was the sound a person makes when the story they've been telling themselves to stay alive falls out from under them all at once. "I didn't," she started. "I thought." "You knew," Dutch said. "Somewhere in there you knew he did it to himself, and you couldn't hold that, so you handed it to me. I get it. I even forgive it. But forgiving it and living with you are 2 different things, and you crossed a line I can't uncross. You starved my wife. You sold my father's chair. You threatened to take my child." He picked the phone back up and put it away. Then he looked at Marisol, and everything in his face went soft. "Come here, baby." She crossed the kitchen and he wrapped her up, the whole huge span of his arms, and she pressed her face into his chest and finally let herself cry, big shaking sobs 8 months in the making, and he held the back of her head with one enormous hand and murmured into her hair, "I've got you. I've got you. Nobody's taking anybody. It's over. It's done. You did so good. You held on so long. It's over." Over Marisol's shoulder, he looked at his mother, who was weeping now into both hands at the kitchen table, an old woman in the ruins of the lie she'd built to survive. "Here's what happens now," Dutch said, quiet, final. "You're going to pack a bag tonight. My road brother Cisco is going to drive you to your sister's in Fresno in the morning. You're going to get the counseling Dad always said you needed after Wyatt and you always refused. And you are not going to be near my wife or my child until a doctor and I both say you're a different person than the one sitting at this table. That's not me being cruel. That's the most a son can do for a mother who did what you did. I'm not calling the sheriff. I'm not telling the club. Wyatt's memory doesn't need any more mud on it. But you don't get this family, not the way you are. Maybe not ever. That part's up to you. Lorraine didn't argue. There was nothing left to argue with. The card was gone, and under the card there'd only ever been a frightened, grieving woman who'd mistaken cruelty for control. She got up, unsteady, and she walked down the hall to the room that used to be a nursery, and she began, quietly, to pack. Dutch got Marisol out of that house within the hour. He didn't want her spending one more night under that roof. He called Cisco, and Cisco called 2 more of the Iron Saints. And by dusk there were 3 bikes and a truck in the driveway, and men who looked like they ate nails for breakfast were carrying Marisol's few things out with a gentleness that would have surprised anybody who only saw the patches and the beards. One of them, a 280-pound former linebacker they called Tiny, found the sold-off crib listed on a local resale page from the receipt Lorraine had left in a drawer. He bought it back that same night with his own money and wouldn't take a dime for it. Set it up himself in the little rental Dutch found them across town, got the sides in backward twice, cussing the whole time, until it stood there solid and waiting. They stayed in that rental while Dutch fixed up the house. He tore the padlock off the pantry and filled the fridge until it wouldn't close. He repainted the nursery himself, pale green, one Saturday, and this time when he got paint on his face there was no one to laugh with him yet, so he took a picture and sent it to Marisol, and she laughed for both of them. Bandit came with them, of course. The old shepherd never left Marisol's side again. He slept at the foot of the bed now, a real bed, and every so often in the night he'd get up and put his gray muzzle on the mattress by her belly and just breathe, checking, the way he'd checked on her all those cold nights in the garage. Dutch would reach down in the dark and scratch the dog's ears. "Yeah," he'd whisper. "I know, you looked after her. I owe you the rest of your life, buddy." And he meant it. Lorraine went to Fresno. She started seeing someone, a grief counselor, and after a few months she wrote a letter, not a defense, not an excuse. Just 3 pages in her tight slanting cursive, and the first line was, "I have started listening to what I did instead of why I did it, and I am ashamed." Dutch read it twice and put it in a drawer. He didn't answer right away. Some things you don't rush, but he didn't throw it away either. That was its own kind of answer, and Marisol understood it as one. The baby came in the spring. A girl. 7 pounds, a full head of dark hair like her mother's, and a set of lungs that made the delivery nurse laugh out loud. Dutch held her in those brick hands like she was made of smoke, terrified he'd break her, and Marisol watched the biggest man she'd ever known go absolutely to pieces over 6 inches of screaming baby. They named her Wendy, but her middle name was Wren, for Wyatt, because Dutch had decided that his brother deserved to be remembered as the laughing kid who took his own keys off the bar, not as a weapon anyone could ever use again. Grief is heavy. But a man gets to choose whether he carries it as a stone or as a name. Marisol never once, in the years after, took a full pantry for granted. She'd open the fridge sometimes just to look at it, at all that food at the door that had no lock, and Dutch would catch her doing it and come up behind her and wrap his arms around her, and their daughter would be somewhere underfoot with the old gray dog, and none of them would say anything. They didn't need to. And late at night, when the house was dark and quiet and warm, Dutch would sometimes think back to that first hour home, the Harley ticking in the driveway, the empty porch, the blanket in the dirt. His wife on a cot in a cold garage, smiling at him through her fear, still trying to protect him even then. And he understood, finally, what she'd known all along and he'd had to learn the hard way. that the strongest thing in that whole house had never been the biggest man or the hardest threat. It had been a starving pregnant woman with a dog and a secret, holding a line in the dark, so the man she loved could ride home free. Nobody handed her that strength. She just had it. And Dutch spent the rest of his life making sure she never had to use it like that again.